In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro meets with independent opposition leaders at Miraflores Palace. Colombian President Gustavo Petro returned to the streets Tuesday to sanction his pension reform law from the Plaza de Bolívar in downtown Bogota. And in Ecuador, citizens protested against the removal of fuel subsidies decreed by the government of Daniel Noboa. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, held a meeting with leaders of the independent opposition seeking to ratify a consensual path for the preservation of peace in view of the upcoming presidential elections. During the reception at the Miraflores Palace, the head of state highlighted the approach with this opposition sector, which ratified its willingness to preserve peace, to work for the development of the country despite of its adverse stances. In the meeting, Nicolás Maduro highlighted his pronouncements in favor of peace, coexistence, and the search for a consensual path. The President of Parliament, Jorge Rodriguez, underlined the hope that this type of meetings will be repeated and sent the message that beyond the differences, they can converge in common proposals for the defense of peace.
Considering the events of these beautiful days that are taking place in Venezuela, I have been watching on the networks and listening to the reflections that you leaders forged and formed in the opposition have been making. Public statements in favor of peace, coexistence, and the search for consensual path. And I said to Jorge Rodriguez, let's invite them, call them to see if they accept an invitation for a conversation. Because I think it is very positive that all these things can be reflected looking at the future, as they say.
The Venezuelan head of state affirmed that although there are differences, what matters is the common destiny of the country.
Here, what is important is the common destiny of a country. There will always be differences, positions. Homo sapiens has 300,000 years, they say, on Earth. How much history has happened? We are an atom in the history of mankind and an atom in the history of the country, all of us here. No one can pretend, no matter how much ego they may have, that they are the beginning and the end of history. Nobody is the beginning and the end. The greatest we have ever had here is Simón Bolívar, and he never pretended to be the beginning and the end of history, but rather to point out a path, and he did point it out.
The independent leader of Venezuela has had an economic recovery in recent years.
I called today on each and every Venezuelan to reflect on what they seem to want to return to the people of Venezuela, which is to try to set it on fire. And that is why I said it the day I read the communiqué, that we are going to be wherever there is peace, that we truly have the conviction, Mr. President, that the country will continue in good hands. And it will continue in good hands because when one makes these statements, many say, well, Carlos, what country do you live in? Whoever denies today the fact that Venezuela has had an economic recovery definitely does not live in Venezuela.
On the other hand, the mayor of the municipality of Obispos in Barinas State, Adrián Azuaje, expressed his interest in the development of the economy and peace of Venezuela.
Obispo has always been present in the history of Venezuela, and today I am pleased to be here setting the pace and being the protagonist of this historic moment that Venezuela is living. A historic moment where we set the pace for the before and the after, and the message that I bring from the state of Barinas and the municipality of Obispo is to work in harmony for our Venezuela. For that peace that we all long for and seek. For the development that Venezuela needs.
The mayor of the Rocio Nieves municipality in the state of Guárico, Zulme Avila, assured that she had wanted to change to the United Socialist Party of Venezuela some time ago due to many differences with her former political party.
I wanted to join the ranks of the PSU, not just now, for a long time, because I saw things that I didn't like within the Democratic Alliance where I was successful. I won the capital of the municipality in 21 days. And from that day until today, I haven't stopped working. I start at 6 in the morning and it is 1 and 2 in the morning and I am still working. With a lot of problems on me as all mayors do, with headaches to the point of exhaustion. With a lot of problems.
In Venezuela, the president and candidate for the Great Patriotic Poll, Nicolás Maduro, was received in the parish of La Vega in Caracas. The people of Caraqueño received Nicolás Maduro with joy, expressing their support and backing for his candidacy for the presidency. The act took place during his tour throughout the national territory as part of his electoral campaign. During the meeting, the current president said that he held a meeting with leaders of the opposition in which they agreed to create a national front for the peace of the country.
I just had a meeting half an hour ago with 8 leaders coming from the opposition. Did you see it? Not because you were already here. There were mayors of the opposition, and there was one of the most important young leaders that has emerged in the last years in the opposition. Carlos Prosperi. Have you heard him? I invited them to have a coffee in Miraflores because on their own initiative. Each one of them issued a statement saying that they were worried about the threats to peace. That they were tired of so much deception from the right wing. Declaring themselves independent and announced their support to the people's candidate. Nicolas Maduro Moros. We met, we talked, and we have decided to found a national front for peace. Where all the leaders who have been in the opposition want peace for Venezuela can fit in.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Colombian President Gustavo Petro returned to the streets Tuesday to sanction his pension reform law from the Plaza de Bolívar in downtown Bogota. The reform is the only one of his social package that has been approved by Congress and intends to lift millions of senior citizens out of poverty. According to the head of state, the enactment of the law is the starting signal for measures such as the 225,000 pesos allowance for at least 500,000 elderly people in state of vulnerability. Several government officials and congressmen also pointed out that this will be a key moment for the first leftist administration in Colombia. In Ecuador, citizens protested against the removal of fuel subsidies decreed by the government of Daniel Noboa. This was a demonstration carried out by members of the Education Council in Quito and the Popular Front, who gathered on the Pan American highway at the height of Lotancunga, with flags and banners blocking the passage of vehicles. Likewise, last July 15th, a similar event occurred in the streets of Guayaquil, where several roads of the city were blocked by demonstrators. In this sense, the event took place after the government of Daniel Noboa announced the removal of fuel subsidies at the end of June, causing an increase in the price of fuel and affecting citizens and transportation companies. On Monday, the state of Puebla in Mexico announced that it will decriminalize abortions up to 12 weeks of gestation. The Parliament of Puebla, considered one of the most conservative states in the nation, approved with 29 votes in favor, 7 against, and 4 abstentions, amendments to the Regional Penal Code to eliminate all penalties for interruptions in pregnancies before the 12th week. It is worth noting that Mexico's Supreme Court ruled in 2021 that abortion is not a crime, effectively authorizing it throughout the country. In this context, Puebla becomes the 14th Mexican state out of the total of 32 to decriminalize the procedure.
We want a Puebla where every woman feels she has options and is not forced to make extreme decisions due to lack of support. We call on you to focus on your schools, make efforts to create public policies that truly protect and empower women.
A federal jury in New York found New Jersey Democrat Bob Menendez guilty on all counts in his corruption trial in the U.S. The evidence revealed that Menendez accepted cash and gold bars in exchange for his political influence. The New Jersey senator was found guilty on all 18 counts he faces, including conspiracy to commit bribery, fraud, extortion, and obstruction of justice. According to the prosecution, the 70-year-old senator used his power and influence when he was chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to help with his wife Nadine Arslanian, a group of businessmen, in exchange for bribes. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov chairs on Tuesday a meeting of the United Nations Security Council to discuss multilateral cooperation for the creation of a more just, democratic, and stable global order. During the meeting, the Russian Foreign Minister emphasized that in modern times, the foundations of the international legal order, strategic stability, and the system of world politics are being questioned with the United Nations at its center. Lavrov denounced that not all countries respect the key principle of the United Nations Charter, which marks the sovereign equality of all states. The Russian top diplomat also said that the United States demands unconditional obedience from its allies, even to the detriment of their national interests. Hungary's intelligence services prevented an assassination attempt against its Prime Minister Viktor Orban, which was perpetrated by Ukrainian forces. According to the Hungarian media, the terrorist plan was to bomb the Prime Minister's car while he was on his way to the airport to take a flight to the city of Moscow in Russia on the 5th of July 2024. Hungary's intelligence services intercepted a conversation between the presumed perpetrator of the failed attack and the coordinator of the operation, who was in Ukraine. They also detailed that one of the actors was a Ukrainian refugee from the city of Ternopil, who had been living in Hungary for 2 years. In Japan, Tokyo Electric Power Company Holdings, TEPCO, conducted the 7th round of treated water discharge into the ocean from the failed Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. TEPCO informed that they discharged around 7,800 tons of water into the sea in this last round. This process, which began on June 28th, has been kept under observation and surveillance by specialists and scientists, who further announced that during the previous discharges up to date, they have not detected any alterations in the abnormal levels of radioactive elements in the nearby waters. This process is part of the decommissioning of the Fukushima Daiichi plant, which suffered damage after the earthquake and tsunami in 2011. We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The Palestinian Ministry of Education denounced that more than 9,000 students have been killed by the Tel Aviv regime since the beginning of the genocide last October. The Educational Authority further informed that 15,182 students have been injured from the onslaught of the Israeli aggression against the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. That has also killed 497 teachers and administrative workers and wounded 30,426. The ministry added that after 9 months of intense Israeli attacks, about 353 public educational centers and universities have been bombed, including 65 belonging to the UNRWA. As a result, the attacks have deprived 620,000 students in the Gaza Strip from enrolling in their schools. In Qatar, Israeli and Egyptian delegations discussed the withdrawal of Israeli troops from the Philadelphia Axis as part of the ceasefire agreement negotiated with the Palestinian Hamas movement. Within the framework of these talks, Israeli officials demanded measures from Egypt to prevent the construction of tunnels and the passage of weapons across the border as a condition for their withdrawal, according to local media reports. These measures include the installation of electronic sensors along the border to detect any future attempts to dig tunnels, as well as the construction of subway barriers. If this step is taken, it would be one less obstacle in the path of peace negotiations between Israel and the Palestinian resistance movement, Hamas. Ivory Coast launched on Monday its first malaria vaccination campaign for the country's children. The first doses were administered in Abidjan, the country's commercial capital. The Ivorian Minister of Health, Pierre Dimba, informed during an official ceremony that malaria transmitted by mosquitoes kills 4 people a day, including 3 children under 5 years of age, becoming also the first cause of medical consultation in the country. The official highlighted that Ivory Coast is the first nation to deploy a vaccine against the disease, being the most neglected infection in the world, with 95% of the cases and 96% of death occurring in Africa.
Unfortunately, it is in Africa, where 94% of cases and 95% of deaths are concentrated. Africa bears the heaviest malaria burden, and children are particularly vulnerable. Every year, nearly 2.5 million children die from malaria in Africa.
Meanwhile, the Ivorian Minister of Health, Pierre Dimba, informed that 250,000 children from 6 to 23 months old will be inoculated during the first phase of vaccination.
The introduction of the malaria vaccine into the routine expanded program of immunization represents a major step forward in our fight. By vaccinating our children from 6 to 23 months old, we can protect them against severe forms of malaria and significantly reduce deaths associated with this disease. This introduction will be phased in gradually to reach all regions of our country. This first phase of vaccination affects 250,000 children aged 6 to 23 months.
In China, the city of Jingdezhen, better known as Porcelain Capital, mesmerizes tourists every night with its attractive handicraft and delicious cuisine.
In this town, located in eastern Jiangxi province, there are several night markets where crowds of visitors flock in search of ceramic artworks and exquisite local foods. In order to further fascinate tourists, the vendors offer a wide variety of products at affordable prices, so that everyone can take home a souvenir of their trip to this city that represents the ceramic culture of the country.
Our business is doing quite well since there are a lot of tourists. It's cooler at night, so people come here to buy some trinkets and have some snacks.
Among the most popular night markets are Taoyang New Village and Jioji. The latter is located in a transformed commercial and cultural area, where former factories once existed. Here visitors can not only enjoy delicious Chinese food but also have fun with a variety of leisure activities that take place in the area.
This night market is quite large, with a wide variety of products for sale, and we can buy many things, such as my favorite bracelets and ceramic mugs.
We came here and heard about Jioji City. There are some pottery stores in that direction that we haven't visited yet, as we wanted to come here first to try some delicious food.
Since the beginning of summer in China at the end of June, the night markets in the porcelain capital, Jingdezhen, have been welcoming more than 10,000 visitors daily, a trend that is on the rise. Thanks to this tourist movement and the new consumption scenarios, new jobs have been created, benefiting almost 20,000 people, which also means a contribution to the increase of the local economy.
We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.